They had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their ships were beautiful things made of crystal and light. Their cities floated in the clouds of 100 worlds. Their people had forgotten what it meant to be afraid. Then the Or came. Commander stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Radiance. She was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 silver eyes. Her hands shook as she watched Another world was dying. The planet below had been called Sanctuary. 3 billion had lived there. Farmers and artists and children had walked its green hills just yesterday. Now fire covered everything. The Or bioships hung in orbit like huge black insects, and their weapons turned cities to ash. "We have lost contact with the defense fleet," said her tactical officer. His name was, and his scales had turned gray with grief. "The Or adapted to our weapons again. Our ships, they are all gone." Closed her eyes. This was the 15th world they had lost this month. The Or did not stop. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply consumed everything in their path like a plague of locusts crossing the galaxy. "How many escaped?" she asked. "Perhaps 200,000 made it to the evacuation ships. The rest could not finish. 3 billion souls, gone in a single day." Turned away from the screen, she could not watch anymore. Her people had tried everything to stop the Or. They had built bigger ships. They had formed alliances with other species. They had begged the neutral conquered for help. Nothing worked. The collective had fled to the far side of the galaxy. The Empire had signed a peace treaty and watched from the safety of their borders. The neutral conquered had sent messages of sympathy and done nothing else. They stood alone. "There must be something we can do," said. "Some weapon we have not tried, some ally we have not asked." Old Scholar stepped forward from the shadows of the bridge. He was ancient even by standards, his blue skin faded to pale white, his 4 eyes clouded with age. But his mind was still sharp. "There is one species," he said slowly. "We have not contacted them because they are in the quarantine zone, the primitive sector." The quarantine zone frowned. "Those species have barely discovered space travel. What could they possibly offer us?" "There is one world there called Earth. The species calls themselves humans," pulled up data on his console. "They achieved interstellar travel only 50 years ago. By our standards, they are children." "Then why mention them?" Was quiet for a moment. "Because I have studied them for many years. They are unlike any species I have ever seen." He showed her images on the screen, saw a world of blue oceans and green land. She saw cities of metal and glass. She saw the humans themselves, small creatures with soft skin and only 2 eyes. "They look weak," she said. "They are not weak, they are something else entirely." Changed the display. Now saw different images, explosions, burning cities, armies marching across ruined landscapes. This is their history. They have been fighting wars against each other since they first learned to walk. Stared at the images in horror. They war against their own kind. Constantly. They have fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over things we cannot even understand. They have killed each other by the millions. They have built weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Paused. And yet they survived. Every time they pushed themselves to the edge of extinction, they found a way back. "This is barbaric," whispered. "Yes, it is. That is why they were quarantined. The Galactic Council decided they were too dangerous, too unstable to join civilized space." Looked at her with his clouded eyes. "But Commander, we are losing this war. The Or have destroyed 80% of our territory in 18 months. Our weapons do not work. Our tactics do not work. Our way of war does not work." He pointed at the images of human conflict. "Their way of war has never stopped working. They have been perfecting the art of killing for 10,000 years. Not killing other species, killing each other. They know how to fight against impossible odds. They know how to survive when survival seems impossible. They know how to be merciless." Felt cold. Everything in her training, everything in her culture told her that this was wrong. They had evolved past such savagery. They fought with honor. They showed mercy to the defeated. They followed the rules of civilized warfare. And they were losing. "They or do not follow our rules," she said slowly. "They do not show mercy. They do not accept surrender. They simply destroy." "Yes," agreed. "And we do not know how to fight an enemy like that. We have never faced one before." He gestured at the images of human warfare. "These humans have faced such enemies many times. They have been such enemies. They know how to fight without rules, without mercy, without limits." Another officer spoke up. "Commander, even if we contacted these humans, would they help us? Why would they risk themselves for strangers?" Smiled, though there was no happiness in it. "Because I have also studied their nature. Humans are strange creatures. They can be incredibly cruel, but they can also be incredibly kind. They have a concept they call the underdog. They often choose to help the weak against the strong, even when it costs them greatly. Something in their nature drives them toward conflict, but also toward protection." Looked at the sanctuary was completely dark now. The fires had consumed everything. In a few hours, the or would strip the planet of all useful resources and move on to the next target. "How long until they reach the?" she asked. "At their current speed, perhaps 6 months, answered. "Maybe less if they continue adapting to our defenses." 6 months. After 12,000 years of civilization, they had 6 months left. Made her decision. It went against everything she believed. It went against every law of civilized warfare. It went against the quarantine that had kept dangerous species contained for centuries. But her people were dying. Her worlds were burning. Her civilization was falling. "Set course for the Sol system," she ordered. "We will contact the humans." "Commander," said carefully, "if we bring them into this war, we cannot control what they will do. Our reports say they are unpredictable, violent. They do not follow the rules of engagement." "Neither do the or." Sat down in her command chair and stared at the darkness where sanctuary had been. "Perhaps that is exactly what we need. An enemy that does not follow rules, fighting for us instead of against us." Nodded slowly. "May the ancestors forgive us for what we are about to unleash." The eternal radiance turned away from the dead world and jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the bioships continued their advance, consuming everything in their path. They did not know that they had just made a decision that would change the war forever. They did not know about the small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, where a species of former predators had spent 10,000 years learning how to be the most effective killers in the universe. The Or had never faced humans before. They had no idea what was coming. The message arrived on Earth at 3 in the morning, Geneva time. It came on frequencies that human scientists had never detected before, carrying words in languages that no human had ever heard. But the translation was clear enough. "We are dying, please help us." General Cole was 56 years old. He had served in 3 wars on Earth before humanity reached the stars. He had gray hair, tired eyes, and hands that still remembered how to hold a rifle. When the call came, he was already awake, reading reports about strange signals from deep space. Now he sat in the United Defense Council chamber, watching the alien transmission play on a massive screen. The creature speaking was tall and blue, with 4 silver eyes that looked exhausted and afraid. She called herself Commander of the Sovereignty. "Our civilization has existed for 12,000 years, the alien said. "We have been at peace with the galaxy for most of that time. We believed that war was something primitive species did before they learned better ways." Cole leaned forward in his chair. "We were wrong. The Dominion does not want peace. They do not want territory. They do not want resources. They want to consume. They have destroyed 80% of our worlds in 18 months. Every alliance we formed has abandoned us. Every weapon we built has failed." The image changed to show battle footage. Cole watched crystalline ships fighting against massive black vessels that looked like insects made of metal and flesh. The ships moved in beautiful formations, firing precise beams of light. The Or ships simply absorbed the damage and kept coming. "We have learned of your species," continued. "We know that you were quarantined by the Galactic Council. We know that you are considered primitive and dangerous. We know that you have spent most of your history fighting wars against yourselves." Captain sat beside Cole. She was younger, sharper, with black hair pulled back tight and eyes that missed nothing. "They're desperate," she whispered. "They're asking the monsters for help." "Maybe we are monsters," Cole said quietly, "but we're their only chance." The transmission ended with coordinates and a request for contact. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Defense Secretary spoke first. "General Cole, what is your assessment?" Cole stood and walked to the main display. He pulled up the battle footage again and watched it carefully. "Look at how they fight," he said. "Perfect formations. Every ship moves together like a dance. When one ship takes damage, the whole formation pulls back to protect it." "That seems like good tactics," said. "It's beautiful tactics, it's honorable tactics." Cole shook his head. "It's also why they're losing." He pointed at the screen. "See here, the Or break through the formation and the retreat to regroup. They give up ground to save ships. They prioritize survival over victory." He paused. "They fight like people who have never been truly desperate." Pulled up more data. According to their records, they haven't fought a major war in 3,000 years. Their military is mostly ceremonial. They have rules about acceptable casualties, rules about targeting civilians, rules about using certain weapons. "Rules the Or don't follow," Cole said. "Exactly. The Or don't retreat when damaged. They don't protect their wounded. They don't negotiate or accept surrender. They just keep coming until everything is dead." Cole thought about Earth's history. He thought about Stalingrad, where soldiers fought with frozen fingers and empty stomachs because giving up meant death. He thought about the trenches of World War I, where men walked into machine gun fire because the alternative was letting their country fall. He thought about every desperate last stand in human history, every time his species had chosen to fight against impossible odds rather than accept defeat. They had never experienced anything like that. They had never been pushed to the edge of extinction. They had never learned what humans learned, that sometimes you fight not because you can win, but because losing is not an option. "We can help them," Cole said finally, "but they won't like our methods." Frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean that we don't fight like they do. We don't follow their rules. When we go to war, we go to win, and we do whatever it takes to achieve that victory." Cole looked around the chamber at the faces of Earth's leaders. "The galaxy quarantined us because they were afraid of what we might do. They were right to be afraid." He pulled up images from human history. Bombing campaigns, night raids, guerrilla warfare, weapons that could level cities in a single flash. "We have spent our entire existence fighting each other. We have invented 1,000 ways to kill. We have studied war like other species study art." Cole's voice was hard. "If we join this fight, we will bring all of that knowledge with us. We will show the galaxy exactly what humanity is capable of." The chamber was silent. "The question is," Cole continued, "are we willing to do that? Are we willing to be the monsters the galaxy fears? Are we willing to use everything we know about war, even the terrible things, to save a species we've never met?" Defense Secretary looked at the transmission of "Frozen" on the screen. The fear in her alien eyes was something any human could recognize. "What happens if we don't help them?" asked. "The Or will destroy then they'll move on to the next species and the next. Eventually they'll reach Earth." Cole shrugged. "We can fight them now with allies, or we can fight them later alone." The vote took less than an hour. It was unanimous. Humanity would go to war. Cole spent the next 3 weeks organizing the expeditionary force. He called up veterans from every conflict on Earth. He gathered the best soldiers, the tacticians, the most experienced killers humanity had to offer. He loaded ships with weapons that they would consider barbaric and tactics that they would call horrifying. Before he left, his granddaughter asked him why he was going so far away. "Because someone needs help," Cole told her, "and we're the only ones who can give it." "But aren't you scared?" Cole smiled at her. "A little, but your grandfather has been preparing for this his whole life. Every war I fought, every battle I survived, it was all practice for this moment." He hugged her tight. "Humans are very good at war, sweetheart. It's not something to be proud of, but it's something to use when people need us." 1 month after receiving the transmission, the first human fleet left Earth. 50 warships, 10,000 soldiers, and the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 years of human warfare. The galaxy was about to meet humanity. They would never forget it. Commander stood at the docking bay of Station 7, watching the human ships arrive. They were ugly things, all sharp angles and heavy armor. They looked nothing like the graceful crystal vessels of the fleet. They looked like weapons with engines attached. The first humans walked off their ship and felt something she had not felt in centuries: fear. They were smaller than these humans, shorter, heavier, with only 2 eyes and strange, soft skin, but they moved differently than any species had ever seen. They moved like hunters. Their eyes scanned every corner of the docking bay, checking for threats. Their hands stayed close to the weapons on their belts. The one in front was the leader, General Cole. He had gray fur on his head and deep lines on his face. When he looked at, she saw something in his eyes that made her want to step back. He had the eyes of a predator. "Commander," Cole said, extending his hand in the human greeting. "Thank you for contacting us. We're here to help." Touched her hand to his, feeling the strange warmth of human skin. "We are grateful, General. The situation is desperate." "I know." Cole looked around the station with those hunting eyes. "Show me everything. Your defenses, your fleet positions, your battle records, all of it." Over the next several days, showed the humans everything. She expected them to be impressed by technology. Instead, she saw Cole shaking his head and muttering to his officers in their strange language. "Your ships are beautiful," Cole finally said. "Your weapons are precise. Your tactics are elegant." "Thank you," said, feeling a small amount of pride. That wasn't a compliment. Cole pulled up a holographic display of battle formations. "You fight like you're putting on a show. Perfect lines, coordinated movements, minimal casualties. You treat war like a formal dance." "We fight with honor," said, her voice sharp. "We follow the laws of civilized warfare." "They or don't care about your laws, they don't care about your honor, they care about winning." Cole deleted the elegant formations and started drawing new ones, ugly ones, chaotic ones. "You need to stop fighting like artists and start fighting like survivors." The first changes came quickly. Human engineers installed new weapons on ships, not the precise plasma lances that preferred, but brutal kinetic cannons that fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Nuclear missiles that could turn a bioship into scattered atoms. Explosive mines that could be hidden in asteroid fields. "These weapons are barbaric," Admiral protested. "They cause unnecessary destruction. They violate 17 different treaties." "Those treaties were signed with species that fight fair," Captain replied. "They or didn't sign anything." The humans also changed tactics. They refused to announce their fleet movements. They attacked at strange hours when or activity was lowest. They set traps using fake distress signals and ambushed enemy ships that came to investigate. "This is deception," said, horrified. "We are lying to the enemy." "Yes," Cole agreed, "that's how you win." The first real battle came 2 weeks after the humans arrived. Our scouting force of 20 bioships entered space, heading toward a colony of 500,000 people. Normally, they would have sent a fleet to meet them in open space. A formal engagement, ship against ship, until one side retreated. Cole had other ideas. "We're not going to meet them in open space," he announced. "We're going to let them get close to the colony." "That's insane," said. "They'll attack our people." "No, they won't, because we're going to be waiting for them." Cole pointed at the star map. "There's an asteroid field between here and the colony. We're going to hide our ships inside it. When the or pass through, we hit them from all sides." "That's an ambush. That's cowardly." "That's effective." Cole's voice was hard. "Commander, you've been fighting this war with both hands tied behind your back. You've been following rules that the enemy ignores. How many worlds have you lost? How many people have died while you maintained your honor?" Had no answer. The ambush worked perfectly. The bioships entered the asteroid field, expecting to pass through safely. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by hidden ships that opened fire from every direction. The humans had placed nuclear mines on several large asteroids. When they detonated, the explosions sent massive rocks flying into the enemy formation. In less than an hour, all 20 ships were destroyed. The lost 3 ships. It was the most one-sided victory they had achieved in the entire war. But felt sick watching it. This wasn't war as she understood it. This was slaughter. "We gave them no chance to surrender," she said to Cole afterwards. "They wouldn't have surrendered anyway. They never do." Cole was cleaning his weapon, a strange human habit. "Commander, I understand that this is difficult for you. Your people have spent thousands of years becoming civilized. You've forgotten what it's like to fight for survival." "We haven't forgotten. We simply chose a better way." "And that better way was killing you." Cole looked up at her with those predator eyes. "They don't care about your principles. They don't admire your restraint. They see it as weakness and they exploit it." He stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "Humans have a saying. In war there is no substitute for victory. Everything else, honor, rules, treaties, none of it matters if you lose. Because when you lose, you die. Your culture dies. Your children die. Everything you ever built or believed in gets swept away." "That sounds like a terrible way to live," said quietly. "It is, but it's also why we're still alive. Every time someone tried to conquer us, we fought back. Every time someone tried to destroy us, we survived. We learned a long time ago that being nice doesn't protect you. Being strong protects you. Being willing to do whatever it takes protects you." Thought about her people, their beautiful cities, their peaceful lives, their elegant culture, all of it burning because they had forgotten how to fight dirty. "What do you need from us?" she asked. Cole smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "I need you to let go of your rules. I need you to stop thinking about honor and start thinking about survival. I need you to become a little bit more like us." He handed her a human weapon. It was heavy in her hands, brutal and simple. "The galaxy thinks we're monsters," Cole said. "Maybe we are, but right now monsters are exactly what you need." Looked at the weapon. She thought about sanctuary burning. She thought about 3 billion dead. She wrapped her fingers around the grip. "Teach me," she said. The came for Prime with everything they had. 3,000 bioships filled the sky, blocking out the stars. Ground swarms numbering in the billions descended on the crystal cities. They expected to run, to evacuate, to die gracefully like they always did. They found something else instead. Sargent had spent 14 months on Prime. She had been sent as part of the first wave of human advisors, tasked with preparing for what was coming. When she arrived, they didn't even know how to hide. "Your people stand in the open when they fight," she had told them. "That's very brave and very stupid." She had taught them different ways: how to dig trenches, how to set traps, how to move through cities without being seen, how to kill quickly and quietly. They were not natural warriors, but they were fast learners. Fear was an excellent teacher. Now, as the first forces landed in the city of harmonious light, watched from a hidden position on the 43rd floor of a residential tower. Beside her, a young named Torais held a human rifle with trembling hands. There are so many of them, Torais whispered. Yes. Looked through her scope at the enemy swarm below. The ground forces were terrifying things, six-legged creatures covered in black armor that seemed to grow from their bodies. They moved like insects, fast and coordinated. That's why we're not going to fight them in the open. The swarmed through the streets of the city, looking for targets. They found only empty buildings. The population had been evacuated to underground shelters, hidden networks of tunnels that humans had helped to dig. Where are they? Heard our commander clicking in their strange language. The prey should be here. Over here, muttered and pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the street below. 200 were torn apart instantly. The building across from collapsed, burying another 100. Before the survivors could react, gunfire erupted from a dozen hidden positions. The resistance had learned to fight like humans. All across the city, similar ambushes were happening, or forces walked into traps that killed dozens before they could respond. Buildings rigged with explosives collapsed on advancing swarms. Snipers picked off commanders from impossible distances. The enemy that had conquered 80% of space found themselves fighting for every street, every building, every room. This is different, heard our officer screech. They are fighting differently. Good, she thought about time. The battle for harmonious light lasted 3 days. The had expected to take the city in hours. Instead, they paid for every block in blood. When they finally reached the central spire, the most ancient and sacred building in the city, they thought they had won. Watched them enter the spire from a kilometer away. Thousands of warriors poured inside, searching for the hiding. They didn't know that the building had been empty for days. They didn't know about the 600 tons of explosives packed into its foundation. I'm sorry, Torais whispered. He was looking at the spire with tears in his silver eyes. That building has stood for 10,000 years. And it'll stand again. Handed him the detonator. Buildings can be rebuilt. Your people can't. If we don't stop them here, there won't be any left to build anything. Torais looked at the detonator for a long moment. Then he pressed the button. The explosion was visible from orbit. The 10,000-year-old spire collapsed into rubble, taking 40,000 with it. The blast sent shockwaves through the city, shattering windows and cracking streets. But it also signaled the beginning of something larger. In orbit, Admiral watched the explosion from the bridge of the human flagship. That's our signal, he said calmly. All ships execute attack pattern Omega. The human fleet had been hiding behind the planet's moon, waiting. Now they surged forward, not in elegant formations, but in a chaotic swarm designed to confuse and overwhelm. The bioships turned to meet them, expecting another easy victory. They had won every space battle against They had adapted to every weapon. They had never faced humans. 3 human carriers broke through the line. They should have retreated. Instead, they drove deeper into the enemy formation, taking terrible damage but refusing to stop. When they reached the center of the fleet, they exploded. Not because they were destroyed, because they chose to. Each carrier had been loaded with antimatter warheads. The crews had evacuated to escape pods at the last moment. The explosions turned 600 bioships into scattered debris. Acceptable losses, reported, his voice steady. 3 carriers for 600 enemy ships, human mathematics. The hive mind reeled from the loss. They didn't understand what was happening. No species had ever deliberately destroyed their own ships as a weapon. No species had ever sacrificed so much just to hurt the enemy. General Cole's voice came over the communications channel from the surface. Push forward. Don't give them time to adapt. Hit them everywhere at once. The combined fleet obeyed. Ships that should have retreated pressed forward. Damaged vessels rammed into enemy bioships. Nuclear weapons detonated inside formations. The battle became a storm of fire and death. and in that storm, the humans were at home. On the ground, the resistance intensified, or forces found themselves fighting not just soldiers, but entire populations. Civilians who had been taught to use weapons, old ones and young ones standing together in the rubble, refusing to surrender. A grandmother named destroyed your patrol by collapsing a building on them. When she was pulled from the rubble, she was still clutching a human grenade in her hand. "They killed she told. "I am done being civilized." By the fourth day, began to retreat. It was the first time in their history that they had withdrawn from a battle. Their hive mind could not understand what was happening. They had superior numbers. They had superior ships. They had superior soldiers. But they did not have the one thing that humans had given the willingness to do anything to survive. As the last ships fled the system, Commander stood in the ruins of Harmonious Light. The city was destroyed. Hundreds of thousands were dead. The air smelled like smoke and blood. General Cole found her there, standing in front of a collapsed building that had been a school. "We won," he said. "Did we?" Looked at the destruction around her. "We destroyed our own cities. We killed our own history. We became like them." "No," Cole stood beside her looking at the same rubble. "You became like us, and that's why you're still alive." He pointed at the sky, where rescue ships were descending to help the survivors. "They're going to call this day a victory. They're going to say that they stood and fought and won, and they'll be right." He looked at with those predator eyes that she had learned to trust. "You learned something that took my species thousands of years to understand. Sometimes the only way to save what you love is to destroy part of it. Sometimes survival is ugly." Thought about the beautiful spire that Torais had destroyed. She thought about the 3 carriers that had sacrificed themselves. She thought about all the who had picked up weapons and learned to kill. "I'm not sure we can go back to what we were," she said quietly. "You can't," Cole agreed, "but you'll find something new, something that remembers the beauty of what you were and the strength of what you became." He smiled, and for once it wasn't frightening. "That's what humans did. We're still trying to be better even after all the terrible things we've done. It's possible, hard but possible." The last bioship vanished into the darkness of space, running from a species that had learned to fight back. The war was not over, but for the first time they believed they could win. And the galaxy began to understand what humans were truly capable of. The war lasted 3 more years after the Siege of Prime. It was not clean. It was not elegant. It was not the kind of war that historians would write beautiful stories about. But it was won. General Cole stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Radiance, watching surrender ships drift toward processing stations. The flagship had been rebuilt after the siege, now carrying both crystal beauty and human steel, like the species that crewed it together. Commander stood beside him. She looked different than she had 3 years ago. There were scars on her blue skin now. Her silver eyes had lost some of their softness. She had learned to fight like a human, and some part of her would never fully heal from that. "The last of the Hive Queens is dead," she said quietly. "The Dominion has surrendered unconditionally." Cole nodded. The final push into space had been brutal. Humanity had brought everything they knew about total war. They had destroyed breeding facilities and bombed production centers. They had hunted the Hive Queens one by one, using tactics that made even hardened soldiers uncomfortable. Captain had led the team that killed the last queen. She had not talked about what happened in those tunnels. Some victories were not meant to be celebrated. "You've saved my people," said. "I should feel grateful. I do feel grateful, but I also feel," she searched for the right word, "changed. We all are." War does that. Cole watched the surrendered ships through the viewport. It takes something from everyone who touches it, even the winners. Your species seems to understand that better than anyone. We've had a lot of practice. Cole smiled, but there was sadness in it. Humans have been through this cycle many times. We learn to kill, we survive, and then we try to remember how to be something other than killers. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't. Thought about the last 3 years. She thought about the things she had ordered done. Cities bombarded to deny them to the enemy. Populations evacuated at gunpoint when they refused to leave. Weapons deployed that left nothing alive for miles. She had become the kind of leader she once would have considered a monster. "How do you live with it?" she asked. "The things we did, the things we became." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "You don't forget. You shouldn't forget, but you learn to carry it without letting it break you." He turned to face her. "The universe is dangerous, Commander. There are things out there that will destroy you without hesitation. Being kind and gentle and peaceful is wonderful, but it only works if everyone agrees to play by the same rules. And when they don't, you need people who know how to be terrible, who can do the things that must be done." Cole looked back at the viewport. "Humans have always been those people. We hate it about ourselves. We try to be better. But when someone threatens what we love, we remember what we are." The door opened and Scholar entered. The ancient moved slowly, but his mind was still sharp. He had survived the siege and the years of war that followed, helping coordinate the alliance between species. "I have been reviewing the casualty reports," said. "The final numbers are significant." "How bad?" Cole asked. "The lost 42 billion people during this war, nearly a third of our total population." Paused. "The humans lost 8 million soldiers, a much smaller number, but given your population, a considerable sacrifice. 8 million humans dead, fighting for a species they had never met, in a war they could have avoided." Cole thought about all the families back on Earth who had lost someone, all the children who would grow up without parents, all the lives cut short in the darkness between stars. "They knew the risk," he said. "They came anyway." "Yes, that is what I have never understood about your species." Looked at Cole with his clouded eyes. "You gain nothing from this war. We cannot offer you territory or resources that you could not find elsewhere. You came because we asked for help. You died because we were in danger." "That's who we are," Cole said simply. "We're not good at being peaceful. We're not good at staying out of other people's fights. When we see someone being hurt, something in us demands that we do something about it. Even if it costs you everything." Cole thought about Earth, about his granddaughter, who was now old enough to understand why he had left, about all the human history that had led to this moment. "Especially then," he said, "the galaxy called us primitive, dangerous, monsters, and maybe we are. But we're also the ones who showed up when no one else would. We're the ones who were willing to do the terrible things that needed to be done." Stepped forward. "What happens now, General? The war is over. Your people have earned the thanks of the galaxy. What will you do?" Cole smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, it looked peaceful. "Now we go home. We try to be the better version of ourselves again. We farm our fields and raise our children and write poetry. We try to forget what we're capable of." His smile faded slightly. "And we pray that no one makes us remember." 1 month later, the human expeditionary force left space. They took their ships and their soldiers and their terrible knowledge home. They watched them go with a mixture of gratitude and relief. The galaxy would never be the same. In the years that followed, they rebuilt their civilization. But it was different now. Their ships still flew on crystal wings, but they carried human weapons. Their cities still rose toward the sky, but they had bunkers beneath them. Their people still valued beauty and art and peace, but they no longer forgot how to fight. They built monuments to the humans who had saved them. Not elegant crystal spires, but rough-hewn stone pillars in the human style. The inscriptions were simple. They came when no one else would. They did what no one else could. Species across the galaxy heard stories about the war. They heard about the primitive species from the quarantine zone who had turned the tide against the ore. They heard about the terrible weapons and brutal tactics that humans had used. They heard about soldiers who died rather than retreat, ships that sacrificed themselves to hurt the enemy, warriors who fought with a savagery that civilized species could not match. Some species were frightened by these stories. They looked at humans and saw monsters, killers, a species that should never have been allowed among the stars. Other species saw something different. They saw protectors. They saw beings who were willing to do terrible things so others wouldn't have to. They saw hope in an uncaring universe. The truth was somewhere in between. General Cole retired to a small farm outside Geneva. He raised vegetables and watched the stars at night. Sometimes he thought about the people he had lost. Sometimes he thought about the things he had done. He never forgot, but he learned to carry it. His granddaughter visited him often. She was studying to be a diplomat, working to build connections between Earth and the wider galaxy, the future that humans had fought for. "Grandfather," she asked him once, "do you think we did the right thing, going to war for strangers?" Cole looked at her for a long moment. He thought about sanctuary burning. He thought about learning to hold a weapon. He thought about 8 million humans who gave their lives for species they had never met. "I think we did the human thing," he said finally, "and sometimes that has to be enough." Far across the galaxy, they told their children stories about the strange creatures from Earth. They described them as fierce and gentle, terrible and kind, monsters and heroes all at once. The children always asked the same question: will they come back if we need them? The answer was always yes. Because that's what humans do. They remember how to be terrible when they have to be. They carry the weight of their violence and try to be better. And when someone, somewhere, cries out for help against the darkness, they answer. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity. Some of it was fear, some of it was gratitude, but all of it was earned. In the darkness between stars, a warning spread among predator species thinking of conquest. Don't make the humans fight, because they will, and they will win, and you will not like how they do it. It was, perhaps, the greatest monument to humanity that would ever be built, not in stone or crystal, but in the nightmares of those who would harm the innocent. The war was over, but the legend had just begun.